Morning, folks. Aaron at bushhoggingservices.com. On my way to Otter Creek, Florida, which is the area that I operate for bush hogging. I've got 3 jobs I'm looking at today. One is a government job, which I didn't ever expect. It's a land clearing job. It's actually clearing and then rocking and fencing a storage area, which is a little outside my wheelhouse, but my goal is to contract others to do the majority of the work and just get it done. So the contact that I was talking to seemed pretty interested in being able to turn this over to somebody else and just let it get done. So it's not too far outside the wheelhouse to not take a good look at it, and I've already done some pricing on it. The steps in the process are relatively easy, so maybe that's a job that'll come around in January. The second one is just a small bush hogging job. You'll see more video from that. That is a little bit different in that it's flat ground and then steep ground behind it, and it has a really interesting, super thick grass that I'm not sure I've seen before, but it is really, really dense, and I'm concerned that my standard duty bush hog is not going to do it. And then I can always step up to the Obama light tree cutter, but that doesn't always give the best cut either, so I may end up having to cut it twice. The problem is I really underpriced the job. I priced it as if it was like mowing a field, and I think it's going to be more complicated than that. I did find some downed trees in it too when I walked it last time, but I'm going to meet the owner for the second time, take a look at it and talk about it, and I'll probably express that there's probably going to be some overage cost and time because of certain things, and see what he has to say. Mowing the slope is going to be interesting. It's the steepest land I will have mowed by far, and I've been watching other YouTube videos on how to do that safely, and if it doesn't look like it's doable, then I'll give him I'll cut his place, at least half of it for free, and call it a day and move on. It's not worth risking any kind of safety issues or damage to the equipment. So it's an acre and a quarter. I was charging $200. I should have been charging probably $250, but maybe $300, considering it's the first time and it's going to take a little bit longer to actually get it done. I think it's somewhere. I was thinking like 2 hours to bang it out, but unfortunately I mentioned the price before I actually walked it. So note to self, keep your mouth shut until the entire job is completely understood. So lesson learned, don't make the same mistake. And then the third one I'm going to look at is a project that potentially came in last night, and it's 13 to 15 acres is how he described it. And it was supposedly just farm field with 4-foot high weeds, not going to be something that a regular mower can do, et cetera, et cetera. And he was just looking for a ballpark price on that. So I went and looked at the satellite map and looked at it and said, obviously there's a lot I can't tell by looking at a satellite map. You don't know if there's mud, you don't know if there's low tree limbs, if you got to mow around a lot of trees. If it's just mowing the open fields, that's completely different than getting into a lot of forward and back movement to cut around obstacles. You don't know if there's debris. You just don't know all these things. So I had to protect myself, so I gave him the high end price, and and I gave him a job price instead of an hourly price. Well, he quickly backed into the hourly price. It was like, how many hours do you think it's going to take? And then obviously that revealed that I'm looking at $75 an hour for basic bush hogging services. So I guess he must be a new property owner, because whoever sold him the property told him, and I don't think he's had a cut before, told him that the previous guy that did the cutting cut the whole thing for $200. And so when I threw my price at him, which was $11.25, he came back and said, basically I could almost hear the shock in his message to me. So I asked him, I said, what are you hoping to pay? And he said, well, the previous owner said I could get it done for $200. And I said, well, you need to call that guy and get his number and make sure that he comes out and mows your place, because $200 is a smoking deal, and no business is going to do it for $200. So, I didn't want to give up on the property, and I'm up in this area, and he's up near Gainesville. So I said, hey, why don't I come by and take a look? Let's not leave it at this, because I know $200 is unrealistic. I mean, it's $100 in tractor fuel alone, plus fuel to trailer the tractor over there, and the time pre and post cut. So it's a loss right out of the gate, unless the guy's driving across the street from his farm over to his to his place and cutting it with his teenage son. So I didn't want to give up on it. And the other thing is, as I was watching in one of the other videos, which the gentleman made a great point, it's always good to meet people. This guy may not be the customer, but I can give him some advice, and I can consult with him about why prices are the what they should be for different types of jobs, and hopefully get him to understand. And kind of playing it over in my head, the question is, what can I do to still earn his business without losing my shirt? I don't think his price point is really $200. That's completely unrealistic, and he won't find anybody at that price. I know that. So by meeting with him, developing that relationship, establishing that connection, I'm going to potentially be the guy that he calls when he really realizes that that's just not doable. So I want to be there for him. The other thing is, I enjoy meeting people. I don't care who you are, where you are, or what your background is. Everybody's got an interesting story, so I always enjoy talking to people and kind of learning about them, and how did they acquire their property, where did they come from, how did they end up here, what are they planning on doing with their property, those types of things, because it's just interesting. And the third benefit is I'll create a relationship where potentially somebody will give me a referral, and that's a nice downstream thing. But if the next guy that he calls shows up and barely can form a sentence and doesn't show up on time, won't meet with him, has shoddy equipment, isn't insured, and things like that, then I'm more likely to have left a really positive impression that leads him to believe that he wants to do business with me. And if he's a good businessman and was able to go through life and retire and have this piece of property, he understands the value of a business. I just think his perspective is completely warped by what the previous property owner said. I really think what the property owner did was gave him a number so low that he wouldn't be afraid to buy the property because of the maintenance costs. So, everybody, $200. Oh, that's no big deal. I can afford that. I can do that a couple times a year. Well, yeah, if it was a real number, but since it's not, then the guy wasn't afraid of moving forward with buying the property because he thought he could maintain it so cheaply, and so it's not practical. So I'm going to go see him, and then we're going to go drive his property and take a look around. And if it is actually one that I can potentially do faster, from just looking at the satellite map, 15 acres, I got to protect myself. I said 15 acres times $75, and that's the ballpark. So it was $11.25. And if it's really, if I don't have to cut the roads, the fields are straightforward, and they're I'm not getting off the roads and cutting around a lot of trees and things like that, then I can reduce that price. And my goal is to find a price point that makes sense for him and me, and where I can come back and cut it 3 times a year and develop that recurring business. And if I can get that done, then we've got a win-win. So I'm going to go see him, and I'll grab some video out there too, and kind of walk and talk a little bit, hopefully, with him to understand what he needs, and also educate him on what's practical and realistic, and why you don't want to pay the lowest bidder. I was talking to a neighbor of mine just the other day, and he was telling me that they were getting into the bush hogging business, but more on a larger commercial scale. And he was talking about the county out here where they had gone with the lowest bidder, and what they found was the lowest bidder couldn't afford to do the job at the price that they were, bidding, and the city or the county was accepting. So the county ended up having to go back and constantly find new vendors in the middle of the year because the work wasn't getting done or wasn't getting done satisfactorily. So it just created more work. And that's what you typically find when you get into the lowest bidder. I've owned other businesses for over 20 years, and the lowest bidder is always a tough one. Sometimes we've been the lowest bidder too, but you start with a base service that you can actually support, and then you add on services from there. So if your base service price doesn't actually support your business in some way, then obviously you can't do business that way. And I think that's the primary problem with people that get into bush hogging is, oh well, I got a tractor, I can do this for $40, $50, $60. No, you can't. You can't actually function at the end of the day with that price point, because you can't pay for maintenance and travel and trailers and mortgage payments on your equipment and fuel, and then at the end of the day you're making minimum wage, and nobody really wants to do that just to have an excuse to drive around a tractor. So today should be an interesting day. I'll grab some more footage and hopefully I'll string all this together for you and put it out there. Maybe what I'll do is this half, and then I'll put the other 3 jobs together. Oh, the other thing is that I'm actually going up here to do some cutting. A neighbor across the street who I did just an hour for the other day, came back and said, hey, look, I got another road that I need you to cut, so I'm going to go cut that, maybe spend an hour on that, cleaning it and widening it. So because I have to travel so far to get up to this area where I do the work, that I usually look for at least a billable hour to cover fuel costs. I'm driving an F-250, and by the time I get done today, I'll have gone through probably $70 to $100 in fuel. So I need to find work to cover that cost. To me, it's the cost of doing business as I'm getting started. I'm not really coming up here to make money because I own another business. This is just almost recreation to me. But I still need to treat it like a business, and I don't want to undermine the other people that are up here doing it more consistently and to actually make a living. I don't want to come up here and say, well, I can do it because I don't need the money, so I can come up here and do it for half of what the other guy can do. It's just not right. Plus, out of self-respect, I'm not going to go do a job at a price point that doesn't make any sense from a business perspective. So I'm not free labor, So anyway, I want to be friendly and mindful and respectful of the other people that work up in this area. And so that's what we're up to today. Should be an interesting day. We're going to get a lot of miles, and hopefully, get some work, get some jobs, or at least tee some jobs up, establish some new relationships with people, and go from there. So we'll get back with you here in a couple minutes when we get to the job sites and start taking a look around. Have a good day.